The heat had already begun to rise over the desert plains by the time Captain Elena Marlowe laced her boots and stepped outside her tent. The air was dry, with a faint, bitter taste of sand on the wind, and the horizon shimmered with early morning haze. Out here, nothing came easy. Not rest, not silence, and definitely not answers. She pulled her jacket tight against the wind and glanced at her watch. 0500 hours. Right on time. Just like always. The base, a forward operating post near Khost province in eastern Afghanistan, stirred slowly around her. Soldiers moved in quiet routines, boots crunching over gravel, murmurs passing between units as they readied for patrols. Above them, the sky stretched pale and empty, save for a circling hawk, drifting on an unseen current. Captain Marlowe was already reviewing coordinates in her mind. Her task was simple: a recon sweep of a rocky ridgeline about 10 miles south, near a dried riverbed and a network of low caves. Intelligence suggested the area had once been used for weapon caches or as a pass-through for hostile groups. No recent activity, but the area hadn't been patrolled in weeks. It was supposed to be routine. She was leading a small 4-person recon team, light gear, light footprint, in and out by sundown. She'd done 100 of these before. Elena checked the sidearm at her hip, standard issue M18, familiar weight, and glanced at her tactical GPS watch, syncing it one last time with the base system. On her wrist, the black band had worn slightly smooth from years of use, but the screen still glowed with precision. She never went anywhere without it. She briefed her team quickly, with the same calm steadiness she always brought to these missions. There was no need for speeches. They all knew the terrain. They all knew the risks. By 0540, they were moving out in a single vehicle, the Humvee engine grumbling against the sand and gravel as they headed south toward the ridge. No one imagined that by the next morning she would be gone. The last confirmed radio contact came at 0907 hours, as Captain Marlowe's team checked in after surveying the northern ridge. Ridge 1 is clear, no activity, moving to the South Pass. Her voice was steady, no sign of concern. The operator back at base marked the log, everything on schedule. But what happened next, no one can say with certainty. The next scheduled check-in never came. At first, the silence didn't alarm anyone. Radio issues happened often, signal dropouts, interference from the rocky terrain. SOP was to wait 30 minutes, then attempt contact again. They tried, once, then again. No reply. By 1100 hours, Base Command initiated standard missing contact protocol, sent a second team to retrace the route, establish visual confirmation. They found nothing. The Humvee was gone. No tire tracks, no footprints. The ridgeline sat quiet under the sun, just endless rock and sand, the wind sweeping across the ground as if wiping it clean. No signs of engagement, no distress signals. It was like they had never been there at all. By late afternoon, panic began to set in. Captain Elena Marlowe's team was experienced, well-trained, vanishing without a trace. It didn't happen. Not like this. Command ordered air reconnaissance, drones, helicopters, wide sweeps over a 10-mile radius. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the desert, and still, no sign of movement. Back at base, soldiers gathered near the comms tent, tension in every movement, in every glance. That night, the temperature plunged, desert cold creeping into every corner of the base. They kept the search teams moving through the dark, through the silence, their voices low over radios. "Captain Marlowe, do you copy? If you can hear us, sign." "I'll now." But the desert answered with wind and silence. By day 3, the search expanded. Reinforcements arrived, terrain analysts, local guides, every cave, every ridge, every dry riverbed combed with care. Still, nothing. The families were notified. Captain Marlowe was missing in action. She became a photograph on a mission board, a case file with red markings and open questions. Her tent sat untouched, her gear still packed neatly, except for the sidearm she carried every mission and the GPS watch she never removed, both gone with her. In the weeks that followed, theories grew. Ambush, capture, friendly fire. No evidence, no messages, no ransom, no claims, Just gone. The desert had swallowed her whole, and in the silence that followed, a truth began to settle. Something wasn't right. But no one could prove it. For the first 10 days, the search for Captain Elena Marlowe continued with urgency, the kind that vibrated beneath every order, every step into the scorching sand, every flicker of hope. By day 5, additional search units had arrived from neighboring bases. Blackhawks hovered day and night, their rotors thundering over the barren ridges, kicking up dust and scattering dry brush. Recon drones scanned endlessly, mapping the area in tight grids, hunting for tire tracks, heat signatures, anything. But the desert gave nothing back, just wind, heat, and silence. By now her parents had been flown to Germany, where they waited at a military support center near Ramstein. Her father, a retired Army medic, stood quietly in the background during every meeting. Her mother cried only once when she was told that the sidearm her daughter carried had not been recovered with the team's missing vehicle. "That pistol," her mother whispered, "was engraved with her initials. Her grandfather gave it to her. She never left it behind." On day 8, a grim reality set in. The vehicle, a heavily armored Humvee, was eventually found, abandoned in a narrow valley, miles off the planned route. Sand and time had nearly buried it. The engine was cold, doors closed. Inside, no blood, no bullet holes, no sign of violence, just a strange, eerie stillness. The radio had been manually disconnected. The other 3 team members, Specialist Lowe, Sergeant Weems, and Private First Class Medina, were also missing. Their gear, like Marlowe's, was gone. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. Why had they diverted from their mission route? Why was the vehicle intact but empty? Why no call for help? The military classified the case as operational disappearance, unresolved, pending any discovery of bodies or confirmed enemy action. In official language, that meant no conclusion. They hadn't died. They hadn't been rescued. They had simply vanished. Back at the forward base, Captain Marlowe's tent remained untouched, her belongings exactly as she left them, a folded journal, an untouched letter from home, and her spare gear, still packed. Her commanding officer, Colonel Jason Reed, visited it daily for a time. Some said he was just overseeing the investigation. Others suspected something deeper, guilt, regret, something unspoken. The press back home caught the story briefly. Female officer vanishes during recon mission. The news cycle moved on within days. There was no scandal, no footage, no proof. The world forgot her. But one man didn't. Lieutenant Alex Donner, her closest friend on base, and once, quietly, something more, refused to let the silence stand. He reviewed every piece of footage, every drone pass, every search route, over and over again. One night, alone in the comms room, he scrolled through logs from the original search, looking for anomalies. And he found it. At 0924 hours, 17 minutes after Elena's last radio contact, a thermal anomaly was recorded on Grid 7C, near a set of shallow desert caves, several miles from the valley where the vehicle was later found. At the time, it was dismissed, likely a goat herd, common in the region. But Donner saw something else. A pattern of heat spots, tight together, human-sized, moving toward the caves, and then vanishing. No follow-up sweep had been done there. He took it to Colonel Reed, who dismissed it again. "Even if that was them," Reed said, "it's been months. There's no reason to believe anyone survived out there. Focus on your current deployment." But Donner didn't forget it. Back home, Elena's father also refused to let the case go. He contacted former colleagues, military contacts, anyone who would listen. He wanted answers, or at least her watch, her pistol, her memory, something. But the desert had given nothing back. No bodies, no signals, just wind that erased footprints and heat that swallowed sound. Her name was added to a plaque at the base chapel. Captain Elena Marlowe, MIA, March 17, 2023. No ceremony, no closure, just silence. And then, 7 months later, the silence finally broke. In the middle of a routine patrol operation, near a region thought long cleared, a 5-man unit was assigned to search a series of shallow caves. The same grid where Donner had flagged the thermal image. It was just supposed to be standard clearance. Walk through, check for hazards, report in. But inside the third cave, a narrow, collapsed crevice of stone and sand, one soldier noticed something metallic glinting beneath a pile of rocks. They dug with hands and small tools, and what they uncovered changed everything. The rocks didn't look like much at first, just a pile, half buried under years of wind-blown dust and shifting sand. The patrol team almost passed them by, thinking they were natural debris from an old cave collapse. But Corporal Diaz paused. There was something unnatural about how the stones were stacked. Not collapsed, not random, deliberately arranged, as if someone had covered something, hidden it. He knelt, brushing the surface with gloved fingers, revealing the edge of metal beneath the dust. "Sir," Diaz called quietly, "you'll want to see this." Sergeant Holt approached, crouching beside him. Together they cleared away more stones. The metal became clearer, not rusted, not decayed, military issue. What they pulled free was a sidearm holster, sand-packed and scratched, and inside, a pistol. Standard issue. M18, U.S. Army sidearm. But what froze both men was what they saw on the grip. 2 initials, faint but visible, etched in small block letters near the base. E.M. The silence was heavy. Holt ran a hand across the barrel. The pistol was empty. Slide locked. The safety still on. But what caught his breath was the blood stain, faded, dried long ago, on the edge of the holster flap. Someone had held this, worn this, bled with it, and then buried it here. Diaz moved again, fingers trembling now, sweeping further beneath the rocks. Another shape, smaller, round. He pulled it free. A tactical GPS watch, cracked across the screen but still intact. The band was frayed. The display flickered faintly, trying to power on. There was no doubt now. This wasn't random gear. It wasn't lost. These were Captain Elena Marlowe's personal tools, the ones she never went anywhere without. Sergeant Holt radioed it in. "Command, this is Patrol Bravo 3. We have a discovery. Gear belonging to MIA Captain Elena Marlowe, items recovered from a cave on Grid 7C, requesting immediate forensic support." There was a pause on the line, then the voice came back, strained and sharp. "Say again. Confirm that name." Holt looked at Diaz, then the items in his hand. "Confirmed. Her sidearm and watch, found buried. Someone tried to hide them." The patrol secured the site, marking off the area, recording every detail. By the time the forensics team arrived, the cave felt colder, not from temperature, but from what it meant. Captain Marlowe's gear had been buried far from her last known position. No body, no clothing, no equipment, just these 2 objects, left like a message or a grave marker. Forensic Officer Lila Jennings handled the items with care. She inspected the gun first. "No fingerprints," she murmured. "Sand scoured them away, but—" She paused, lifting the grip. "Serial number matches her assigned weapon, and, yes, the engraving is hers." She turned to the GPS watch, carefully removing the damaged battery, connecting the device to a portable data reader. For a moment the screen remained blank. Then, a faint flicker. Coordinates. Time stamped. The last recorded location. 1.8 miles south, inside the Desert Ridge Network. Date, March 22nd, 5 days after she disappeared. Jennings looked up. She was alive. At least 5 days after she vanished. This log shows movement, walking, maybe slow. She hesitated, voice tight. And the last entry, the signal just stops. Either the battery died, or she left the watch behind. News spread fast. Within hours, Lieutenant Donner was called to the command post. When he saw the recovered items, he said nothing at first. He just reached out, his hand resting on the scratched surface of the watch. "I gave her this," he whispered. "Last deployment." A new search was authorized, immediate and intense. This wasn't just a missing person case anymore. This was a possible survival scenario, delayed discovery, and maybe a missed chance to rescue her. The search led them to the desert ridge. The coordinates from the GPS watch brought them to a narrow path, hard to spot, choked with brush. At the base of the ridge, a small alcove, almost invisible unless you knew to look. Inside, nothing. Just dust, old footprints, and a single stone set upright in the center. On it, scratched faintly with some kind of sharp tool, EM. And beneath it, 5 tally marks. No one spoke. The marks could mean anything. 5 days, 5 tries, 5 lives. But in the silence, a message echoed. She was here. She waited. She left something behind. Back at base, the items were cleaned, logged, and placed in evidence storage. But Donner kept returning to them. He couldn't stop thinking, why bury them? Why not use the watch to signal? Why leave the gun? Unless she wasn't alone, unless someone else took them from her and buried them to hide what really happened. The forensic lab inside the forward base was dim, the hum of old machines filling the silence as the techs worked through the night. Outside, the desert wind howled softly, rattling the tent flaps. Inside, Lieutenant Donner stood over the screen, arms crossed tightly, eyes locked on the GPS data retrieved from Captain Marlowe's watch. On the screen, a map unfolded, a trail of recorded coordinates, each point marked in faded blue. Time-stamped, logged. 5 days of movement, stretching from her last known position to the cave where her gear was found. But it wasn't a straight path. It was erratic. Jennings, the forensic analyst, zoomed in on the map. "This isn't a retreat pattern," she murmured. "She wasn't heading back to base. Look," she pointed at the screen. Day 1, she moved north, toward the cave network. Day 2, she doubled back, then east, circling the ridge. Day 3, stationary, no movement. Donner leaned closer. "Could be injury, or hiding." Jennings nodded. "Possibly both." Day 4. A sudden spike in movement, heading directly toward a small plateau, roughly 2 miles from the abandoned Humvee. Day 5. The GPS logged a single coordinate, just once. Then, nothing. No movement. No signal. Donner frowned. Could she have dropped the watch? Jennings hesitated. Possible. Or the battery finally died, but... She pulled up a side panel. "This data here looks like the watch recorded an impact event just before it shut off, like it was struck. Hard." She turned to him. "That means someone, or something, hit it." The theory grew heavier by the minute. She wasn't just lost. She was being pursued, maybe injured, maybe worse, and somehow her gear ended up buried. Back at Central Command, Colonel Reed reviewed the data, his face unreadable. "Sir," Donner said quietly, "we need to follow the trail. There could be more. Another site. Maybe—" He didn't finish the sentence. Maybe she's alive. Or maybe her remains are still out there. Either way, they owed her the truth. Permission was granted. Within hours, 2 patrol units and Donner's small recon team were en route to the plateau, guided by the final GPS coordinates. The sun beat down fiercely, the desert relentless. Dust swirled with every step. The terrain was harsh, scattered with stone and dry grass. The location, marked by the final GPS ping, was a narrow ravine, half collapsed, filled with debris and wind-blown sand. No signs of recent disturbance. Until one of the soldiers found a piece of fabric caught under a rock, camouflage pattern, faded, and beneath it, a scraped stone, like someone had fallen there. No body, no footprints. But Donner stared at the rock, his jaw tight. "She fell," he whispered. "Here, she was hurt." A few feet away they found the remains of a flare cartridge, half buried. It had been fired, but no one saw it. No one came. Donner turned away, jaw clenched. His voice was low. She tried, she waited, and she signaled. Silence answered. Later that night, Donner sat alone in the comms tent, rewatching the data. His thoughts circled back to the other 3 soldiers, Her team, Lowe, Weems, Medina. Where were they? Why had none of their gear been recovered? Why only hers? And why hidden? He pulled up their final mission logs. Old, archived, mostly redacted, but something caught his eye. Private Medina had requested a private message sent home the night before the mission. The message was flagged, never delivered. Donner stared. He requested it again, under new authorization, and, hour later, a transcript arrived. Short, disjointed, but 3 lines stood out. "Something's off with the op. They're keeping things from us. If we don't come back, tell my mom I didn't run." Donner's breath caught. He didn't run. He took the transcript straight to Colonel Reed. "This wasn't a clean mission," Donner said. Reed's face remained stone. "No mission is ever clean, Lieutenant." Donner pressed. "Sir, the gear was hidden. There's no reason for that, unless someone didn't want it found." Reed sighed, then stood. "Careful, Donner. You're starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist." Donner didn't flinch. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm the only one still trying to find the truth." Reed dismissed him. But that night, Donner went back to the GPS map again and found something no one else had noticed. The last movement log, the final ping, wasn't in a straight line. It curved slightly, like someone wasn't walking alone. Someone was forcing her to move. He stared at the screen for a long time, and then, in the quiet, a truth formed. Captain Elena Marlowe didn't vanish. She was taken, and someone went to great lengths to make sure no one found out. The desert hadn't changed in 7 months. It still stretched out in every direction like a vast, endless ocean of dust and stone. Time didn't move here the same way it did anywhere else. It wore things down slowly, silently. But some things it couldn't erase. Lieutenant Alex Donner stood at the edge of the ravine, boots pressed into the coarse sand, staring down at the spot where Captain Elena Marlowe's GPS signal had ended. He'd been here before, briefly during the initial search, but then they hadn't known. They hadn't seen what was now so painfully obvious. This was where it happened. Whatever it was. Around him, soldiers from the newly assigned recon unit moved with quiet purpose, scanning the ground, checking crevices and rock faces for any overlooked sign. Corporal Diaz, one of the younger patrol members, moved slowly along the slope, eyes fixed on the ground. "Sir?" Diaz called. "Found something." Donner hurried over, heart thudding in his chest. In the dust near the base of the ridge beneath a low overhang, Diaz crouched beside a blood-colored rock. It wasn't blood, Donner realized, but it bore a deep scrape, angled, rough, as if someone had fallen or been dragged against it. Diaz pointed further down. "There's more." A trail, faint, half-buried, of scuffed stone and disturbed earth. Forensic Officer Lila Jennings arrived moments later, carrying a portable scanner and black light. She worked quickly, silently. Within minutes, the scanner revealed residue patterns, signs of movement, of impact, and more disturbingly, of 2 distinct sets of boot prints. One pattern matched standard U.S. Army issue combat boots, the other, too degraded to identify clearly. But what Jennings could confirm was chilling. "These prints overlap hers," she said quietly, "and they're fresh, as in fresh after the fall." Donner's face tightened. She didn't fall alone. Minutes later, a shout echoed from further down the ridge. "Got something!" The search team converged. Partially buried beneath a thin layer of sand and debris, they uncovered human remains, skeletal, sun-bleached, fractured. The desert had done its work. Beside the bones, a dog tag half covered in grime. Jennings cleaned it with gentle hands. PFC Raul Medina, one of Marlowe's team, missing for months, now dead, alone in the dust. Donner stared at the remains, a bitter taste rising in his mouth. No signs of gunfire. No signs of defensive wounds, just bones and the endless wind. Jennings was already examining the area. "Preliminary analysis?" she said. "Possible blunt trauma, or maybe just exposure. Hard to tell. He didn't die here by chance. Someone left him here." As they secured Medina's remains, Donner walked away from the group toward the stone scrape where they belied. Ved Marlowe fell. He crouched, hand hovering above the dust, tracing the rough line of the impact. She'd hit here, hard. But she'd gotten up. The trail didn't end here. It continued, winding through the rocks, vanishing into the darkness of the ravine. Back at base, Donner pulled every available record on Sergeant Leah Weems, the senior NCO on Marlowe's team. Most of her file was classified or heavily redacted. But what he found was disturbing. 2 prior deployments had included unexplained incidents, followed by immediate reassignment. One report, mostly blacked out, mentioned a failure to report combat engagement and mishandling of classified field orders. No disciplinary action, no official reprimand, just silence. Donner paced the comms tent, the pieces spinning in his head. 3 soldiers vanished, 1 now found dead. Marlowe's gear buried in a cave, her last movements erratic, and a history of command silence surrounding the one person who may have had motive. And then, Medina's unsent message, found in the logs days ago, returned to Donner's mind. "If we don't come back, tell my mom I didn't run." Why would a young private write that, unless he knew something was wrong? Donner brought the files and evidence to Colonel Reed once again. "Sir, we've got proof this wasn't a clean mission. Medina's remains, the gear, the footprints, and Weems's file." Reed didn't look up. "You're reaching." Donner's voice hardened. "No, sir. I'm following the truth. The mission went sideways. Someone tried to erase it." Reed's eyes were cold. "And what are you accusing me of, Lieutenant?" Donner held his gaze. "I'm accusing the system, the silence, and whoever gave Weems a pass twice and sent Marlowe out there without telling her the truth." Reed stood, slow and deliberate. "You need to let this go." That night, Donner didn't sleep. Instead, he reajoutage. He turned to the cave where Marlowe's gear had been found. Alone. The desert was colder now. Stars blanketed the sky, silent witnesses. He moved to the spot, marked now with a single, small flag, and knelt, hands digging into the sand, feeling for something missed. And then, his fingers struck plastic. He pulled gently. A weathered, wrapped package, small, careful. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a scrap of fabric and a folded note, written faintly in pencil. 4 words. "He was one of us." Donner stared at the note, breath shallow. It was her handwriting. Captain Elena Marlowe had survived. She'd known someone betrayed her, and she left this, buried, for anyone who still cared enough to find it. The scar in the stone wasn't just from her fall. It was the last mark of her refusal to be forgotten. The small note lay on the table between them. 4 words in faint pencil, smudged by time, yet still readable. He was one of us. For hours, Lieutenant Donner stared at it, heart pounding with a mix of anger and sorrow. Every inch of this desert, every grain of sand, had conspired to bury the truth, but somehow Elena Marlowe had managed to leave this behind. She had known. Someone in her team, or connected to it, wasn't who they said they were. The next morning, Donner walked into Colonel Reed's office, unannounced. The note was in his hand. He placed it on the desk with quiet precision. Reed glanced at it, then up at Donner. "What is this?" Donner's voice was steady. "It's from Marlowe, found buried near the site where her gear was hidden. She knew someone betrayed her." Reed didn't flinch. "It's not proof." Donner stepped closer. "You've been stonewalling me for weeks. Why? Why hide Weems' record? Why suppress Medina's message? What really happened on that mission?" Reed's jaw tightened. "You're treading dangerous ground, Lieutenant." Donner leaned in. "Was this about intel? An off-books op? Did Weems have orders Marlowe didn't know about?" Silence. Then Reed said quietly, "You're done here. This conversative that. Ion never happened." Donner didn't move. "So we just forget her? Forget Medina? Pretend this never happened, while you protect whoever sent them out there unprepared?" Reed's voice dropped to a warning. "Walk away, Alex. You don't want what's on the other side of this." Later that night, Donner sent a message, encrypted, secure, to Marlowe's father, still in Germany. Attached were photographs of the gear, the note, and a brief message. She left this behind. We're still searching. The next morning, a civilian vehicle arrived at the base. A man stepped out. Retired Colonel Daniel Marlowe, Elena's father. He walked with a cane now, but his eyes were sharp, focused. Donner met him at the gate. "You're not supposed to be here, sir." Daniel Marlowe nodded. "Neither is the truth, but I'm done waiting." They walked together to the forensic tent, where Elena's sidearm and watch lay sealed in evidence cases. Daniel reached out, fingers trembling slightly, and touched the watch. "She wore this during training," he murmured. "Said she didn't trust the standard timers, needed precision." He picked up the case. "She didn't just vanish, did she?" Donner shook his head. "No, sir. Someone made sure of that." That afternoon, an internal investigation was quietly launched. Unofficial, off-record, but real. Driven by Daniel Marlowe's military contacts, the pressure mounted quickly. Files were reopened, orders traced, and within days, a name emerged. Major Alan Kessler, field intel officer, linked to multiple missions where troop movements were rerouted without proper oversight. He'd been attached to Marlowe's unit the week before she disappeared. Donner confronted Reed again, this time with backup. "You protected Kessler," Donner said. "He sent them into that valley, redirected them from their mission route, and you signed off on it." Reed didn't deny. "You don't understand. There was intel about a high-value target. We had to act fast." Donner's voice rose. "Without telling Marlowe, without informing her command, you used her team as bait." Reed slammed his fist on the desk. "Kessler said it was clean, that he had ground confirmation. He lied. We didn't know until it was too late." Donner stared at him. "So you covered it up, buried it, like her gear, like Medina." Reed's eyes dropped. "There was pressure, higher than me. Weems was part of it. She knew the plan. Marlowe didn't. When things went wrong, Kessler pulled out, left them behind." Donner felt sick. "She was alive for days, and you knew." Reed whispered, "I thought she was dead. We all did. Until they found that watch." That night, Donner wrote a report, detailed, precise, documenting the mission's true objective, the unauthorized order, and the evidence of betrayal. He submitted it to CENTCOM, knowing it might cost him his career. But truth mattered more. In Germany, Daniel Marlowe stood at his daughter's old grave, a memorial stone with no body beneath it, and placed her watch on the ground. His voice broke as he whispered, "You didn't run. You didn't give up. And I won't stop until they answer for what they did." The case wasn't closed. Now, it was just beginning. The investigation didn't stop. It couldn't. Not now. After Donner's report was submitted to CENTCOM, the official response was swift and surgical. Major Alan Kessler was removed from duty, pending inquiry. Colonel Reed was reassigned under review. But there was still no body, no confirmation. Captain Elena Marlowe remained missing, and Lieutenant Donner couldn't let that be the end. He reviewed everything again, every GPS coordinate, every report, every grainy surveillance image. And one thing kept returning to his mind, the plateau where her signal stopped. They had found PFC Medina's remains nearby, but not Weems, not Elena. And there had been something else. Donner opened the field notes from the recovery patrol, a small entry overlooked in the chi. AOs. Found rusted camp stove, civilian model, buried under rocks near Plateau Ridge. No further analysis, no context. But Donner recognized the model code. It was a type issued for covert ops, often used in undercover or unacknowledged missions. He remembered seeing one before, in the gear Kessler carried when he first arrived. That night, Donner met with Forensic Officer Jennings again. She had run soil analysis on the cave where Elena's watch and sidearm had been recovered. Jennings looked troubled. "There's something strange," she said. "The sand around her gear. It had engine oil in it, traces of diesel fuel." Donner frowned. "From military vehicles?" Jennings shook her head. "No, civilian, possibly a generator, or a small engine." She hesitated. We also found shavings from nylon fabric, like from a tarp. Someone had set up camp near that cave, not just once, for days. Donner's mind raced. Elena wasn't just hiding. She, or someone, had lived there, briefly, and then left, or was taken. The search team returned to the site, this time with ground-penetrating radar and a K-9 unit specialized in recovery operations. 2 days in, they found a collapsed tunnel at the base of the ridge, partially hidden by rockfall. A narrow crawl space, man-made, old, possibly from Soviet-era occupation. Inside, dark, cold, they found what remained of a field shelter. Rusty equipment, a decayed sleeping bag, empty ration packs, and bloodstains. Faint, dried into the stone. Jennings ran tests on site. "Blood type matches Marlowe," she said quietly. Donner stood silently, hand on the stone wall. She'd been here. For how long? No one knew. But she hadn't died here. There were no remains. Then Diaz, the young corporal, called out from deeper inside the tunnel. "Sir, we've got something else." A hand-carved marking etched into the wall with what looked like a knife blade. Initials EM, and below it, again, 5 tally marks, same as the first cave. Donner stared. Not a countdown, a message. 5 people? No. 5 days. Possibly. He crouched beside the wall, running his fingers over the marks. Elena had left this. She'd been conscious, able to mark time, even as she bled. But why only tally marks? What had she expected to happen? A few feet away, Jennings uncovered a makeshift splint, fashioned from metal rods and cloth. She was injured, Jennings said, probably her leg. This splint would have allowed her to move, barely. Donner stood slowly. She tried to escape. Maybe she did. Back at base, Donner cross-checked satellite imagery from 7 months ago, focusing on the days after her last GPS ping. One image, grainy, low-res, showed a figure, alone, moving along a canyon path north of the plateau. It was too blurred to identify, but the timestamp matched exactly 2 days after her last GPS signal. She had survived the fall, the injury, the betrayal, and somehow she had kept moving. Donner returned to the collapsed tunnel the next morning, determined to follow every trace. Near the entrance, just outside the stone wall, he noticed something metallic glinting in the sand. He knelt, brushing it clean. A dog tag, cracked, weathered, but not Elena's. Sergeant Leah Weems. Jennings confirmed the remains nearby. Scattered, partially buried. Cause of death, blunt trauma to the skull, not self-inflicted. Weems had died here. Donner's heart raced. Was it a struggle? Revenge? Self-defense? Had Elena killed Weems to escape, or had someone else done it? The dog tag still hung from Donner's hand. He stared at it, thoughts swirling. Maybe this was why Elena's gear had been buried, to hide Weems' death. A cover-up inside a cover-up. Donner stood in the silence of the cave, the truth pressing against him. Elena Marlowe had survived longer than anyone believed. She'd been injured, trapped, possibly hunted, but she'd fought back. And someone had buried the evidence and her to make sure no one ever found out. Now they had. They followed the trail where satellite imagery had shown a lone figure moving north through a canyon 2 days after Captain Elena Marlowe's last GPS signal. It wasn't much. A flicker of motion, a shadow in the rocks. But in a place where the desert erased all things, even a shadow could be a lifeline. Lieutenant Donner stood at the mouth of that canyon now, flanked by 2 search team members. The sun was merciless overhead, baking the stone and sand. Wind whistled through the narrow walls like a voice lost in time. Every step forward felt like walking into the past, into the path she might have taken, alone, injured, and desperate. They moved slowly, eyes scanning every rock, every patch of earth. 20 minutes in, one of the soldiers called out. "Sir, there's something here." Donner rushed over. A small cairn of stones, arranged deliberately. Someone had stacked them, not recently, but not ancient either. They dismantled it carefully. Beneath it lay a folded piece of canvas, old, weathered. Inside it, another note. It was written in the same pencil, the same hand. Donner unfolded it slowly, heart pounding. 3 short lines. March 27th, still alive. Made it to Canyon. I don't know if anyone is coming. He stood still, the words burning into him. She had made it this far, 10 days after she vanished. Still alive, still fighting. Further down the canyon, they found scratches on the rock wall. Faint marks from boots or hands or both. A trail of movement. And then, a small alcove, half hidden behind a boulder. Inside, they found the remains. Clothing, sun-bleached. A rusted canteen, empty. Her uniform jacket, folded with care. And beneath it, human remains. Fragile, nearly lost to time, but still there. The forensic team confirmed it later. Dental records, a DNA, all matched. Captain Elena Marlowe had died here. Alone. Likely from dehydration, exposure, and injury. No trauma, no violence. She had made it 11 days, alone in the desert, trying to get back, trying to be found. Donner knelt in silence beside the place she had fallen. She had fought every step, injured, betrayed, hunted. But she had still left messages, left markers, refused to give up. He looked down at her jacket, still folded. Inside the breast pocket, a photograph. A younger Elena standing beside her father, both in uniform, smiling. Donner held it tightly. Back at base, they packed her belongings with reverence, her jacket, her canteen, the pencil she had used, the final note. Her watch and sidearm, already recovered, would go home with her. The official report would say she died in the line of duty, lost after an unauthorized mission route change. The truth, the betrayal, the cover-up, would be handled quietly by higher command. But Donner made sure the record told more. He wrote the full report, every detail, every discovery, and attached her notes, her markings, and her voice. At her memorial, held weeks later at a small cemetery in Virginia, military honors were rendered. Daniel Marlowe stood by his daughter's casket, flag draped, silent. He didn't cry, he had no more tears, just a hand pressed to the wood. She didn't die lost, he said quietly. She died a soldier. Donner approached. He handed Daniel the folded notes, now sealed in protective casework. She left these, Donner said. She wanted someone to know. Daniel nodded. She knew I would look. He opened the case, fingers trembling over the pencil-written words. A week later, Donner returned to the desert. He visited the canyon where they had found her. Alone, he stood in the alcove, and there, on the rock wall, he carved her initials, E.M., beside the tally marks she had scratched in another place. 5 marks, 5 days, 5 tries, or maybe 5 promises. I found you, Donner whispered. We brought you home. The wind and swirled softly. Later, he mailed one final report, unofficial, unclassified, to every family member of the soldiers involved. It ended with these words. Captain Elena Marlowe walked further than we ever expected. She left messages, signs, and traces. She didn't give up. She didn't vanish. She was taken. She fought, and she will be remembered. In the years to come, her story was rarely told. No scandal, no headlines. But in quiet corners, among soldiers who still remembered her, her name became something more. A symbol of strength, of endurance, of truth that wouldn't stay buried. Somewhere beyond medals and reports, beyond the official citations and folded flags, there exists a quieter truth, one not recorded in files or spoken aloud in meetings. Captain Elena Marlowe was not just a name on a wall or a case number in an archive. She was a daughter, a soldier, and a person who fought until the very last moment, even when no one was watching, even when no one came. For days, she survived alone, wounded, betrayed, forgotten by those who should have protected her. And yet she left behind signs, messages, traces of her presence, refusing to let the silence erase her. She believed that someone would still come looking, that someone would care enough to find her, and because of that belief, because of that unbreakable will, she was found. We honor her not for how she died, but for how she endured, with strength, courage, and unwavering determination. Let her memory be more than a footnote or a cautionary tale. Let it be a reminder that every life has weight, that truth matters, and that no sacrifice should be buried beneath silence. Captain Marlowe is home now, and though her journey ended in the dust and heat of a distant desert, her story will not end here. For those who remember her, for those who carry her name forward, she will never be truly gone.